and welcome back to another episode today of Unscripted and Unchoreographed. Today we have Steve Batts, the Artistic Director of Echo Echo Dance Theatre. One of the reasons why you're on today to talk about the lack of funding for Echo Echo Dance. We're also going to get into the whole situation around Echo Echo Dance Theatre and what its future looks like. At the moment, it probably looks very precarious and we probably don't even know all the answers, but I would love to dive in with you and share what's going on.
Thank you very much for inviting me on. The positive things I can tell you about what we've done and what we do and what the ideas behind the company are. Who's involved, all that sort of stuff. And that's the best way of putting the situation we're in into context from our point of view and many other people's point of view, clear unfairness in the funding cut, given what we do and how we do it. We can point people at online stuff on our website that give you a bit more detail about what's going on. Also, a lot of letters of support that we've published there, which give you a really good overview of what the company is and why it's important.
Can you take us back to the very start? You set up Echo Echo Dance Theatre with Ursula in 1991.
Yeah.
What were the reasons for setting up this company?
Ursula and I met in Amsterdam. I'd been working in England for quite a few years, and then I decided finally that I ought to go to dance school, having not been. I was autodidact kind of person and had a company with some other people in Oxford, which was reasonably successful in the 80s, late 80s, in this new dance kind of area. We did a lot of projects and we performed at some festivals. And then that project kind of ran out and I got an opportunity to go and do a project in Amsterdam. So I went to Amsterdam and decided, well, while I'm in Amsterdam, I could go to dance school for a while. There was a school there called the School for New Dance Development. It was a very interesting school because it was very much based on research practice into movement rather than learning to do things with your body. Very influenced by the postmodern, what people usually call postmodernism from America, or more modernist, really. People like Steve Paxton and Deborah Hay and Yvonne Ryan are icons in a way now. They were there teaching a lot at the School for New Dance Development. So they had this program where if you were practicing dance already, you could go as a visiting student. It was very, very cheap. And it brought outside influences into the company. So I had quite a lot of experience teaching. I'd done a lot of stuff with what people now call inclusive, dancing with lots and lots of different people with all kinds of different backgrounds and not just with kind of young folk with stretchy bodies. And I think that was very interesting for them. So I think I was accepted into the second or third year, I can't remember now, as a kind of visitor. And I was supposed to go for maybe a year and actually ended up being there just for 2 months because 2 months I was absolutely full because I was autodidact. What I did was go to a workshop for a weekend or go to classes and then I would go in the studio and work and practice and explore and experiment with my friends or on my own. So we were incredibly efficient. But this kind of 9 o'clock to 9 o'clock every day with kind of pre-class, 2 classes in the morning, workshop in the afternoon, rehearsals, performances. Literally, the program for most people at that school would have been 9 till 9 every day, 6 days a week, probably. So after 2 months, I was full. And at the same time, I was doing this project that I'd been invited to do with a colleague there. At the school, Ursula was, I think, in the third year or the fourth year at that time, I can't remember. And we worked a bit together. And I made a solo for her. Then she invited me to be in her graduation piece. And then from there, we went, we really like working with each other. And we had some very similar ideas. One of the things that we decided was that you couldn't do anything short term that was really worthwhile. So you had to commit. So instead of following this view of a project here and a project there and always looking over your shoulder to the project that you could have done if only you hadn't committed to this one, and auditions in the middle of a project and you going off traveling around, no stable life, which is still very typical of people working as professional dancers who are working for companies and for the choreographer who tells them what to do. We didn't really like this model. So we decided what we would do would be to commit to working together long term as our priority. We did other things as well, but definitely the priority was to work with each other, to create a company structure and to grow it, to grow this collaboration over the long term. So that's what we did. We did a lot of work in former communist countries, really Eastern Europe, like Hungary, and we were both in Ukraine a lot, in Kharkiv, and a lot in former East Germany. particularly in Potsdam, but other places, Dresden as well. So we were traveling around. So we set this company up with this view, and we started making collaborations with people that were ongoing longer collaborations, particularly with a place called the Fabrik in Potsdam, where a guy called Wolfgang Hoffmann, who later became the director of the Dublin Fringe, actually, and really had an amazing job at the Dublin Fringe. He had set up a project there originally in a squatted factory. It got legalised. It became an annual festival. I was making work there for this joint company with the Fabrik and Echo Echo. We toured a lot in Ukraine, Germany, in Ireland. So we were making pieces and touring and also doing a lot of participatory projects and organising a festival. But we saw this and we thought, oh, this is very interesting. Along with experience I'd had in Oxford when I was living in Oxford of being in a theatre there called Pegasus Theatre in Oxford. We had seen this kind of idea about what a venue, what a company, what a sort of collective process could create. And we had this idea that that was something that we could see maybe something that we would pursue. We travelled around a lot. We didn't really have a home. We were based in Holland for about 4 years and then in Switzerland, because Ursula was Swiss, for about 2 years. But we were mostly on the road. We didn't really have a base, and it was tiring. So we were touring in Ireland, 96, with 2 duets. We were performing at the Playhouse in Derry, and we mentioned to somebody on the team that we were looking for a place. And literally the director, Pauline Ross, just went, oh, why don't you be the company in residence here? The Playhouse at this time was kind of broken windows and freezing cold and no heating and a bunch of people who just wanted to make it work. So we thought, oh yeah, maybe this would be what we could do. It was an interesting time because it was like 96, peace process time. I had left Portstewart in the East Derry in 1979 when I left school. And basically in the 70s, if you got your exams, you went away to study. Most people wanted to just go away from Northern Ireland. And it was a pretty strange time to grow up, especially as somebody who had moved from England when I was 12 into Northern Ireland during the Troubles. So there was a kind of unresolved business feeling for me. More and more wanted to come back. And a few years before, Ursula and I had done a performance in Belfast with a couple of musicians from Belfast, which was called The Elements of Love in a Negotiated Settlement. It was strange because we hadn't really thought about that piece as very directly to do with the peace process. It was kind of very early in the peace process. It was more about personal things and about how you improvise. It was an improvisatory piece. And this piece became very important in this choice to move, because we were thinking, oh, actually, somehow this has already begun. We came here and did this piece that was called The Elements of Love in a Negotiated Settlement. And that turns out to have a strong resonance with the time that's in it. So we went away and then we just went, yeah, let's give it a go. So Ursula went on to make some money. She went around the world on a cruise liner with a colleague of ours who was a video maker, making videos for the passengers, and also making surreptitiously a documentary film about the life of below decks people. So they did this film, and she sent me to Derry while she was away cruising around the world to kind of set everything up with £500. Yeah. So I came to Derry and found a place to live, and Pauline at the Playhouse had organised a little bit of work through a community arts training programme. So I had a few weeks of work to start with, and I spent the £500 on a gateway computer. Like, we hadn't got a computer or anything at this stage. Everything was done on the phone and notebooks. And so in 97, and sat in a really cold office on the back stairs, wrapped up to try to keep warm, and danced in an extremely cold studio. And then later on in that year, Ursula came back, having gone around the world on a cruise liner. And then we just got stuck into it. I can remember having this talk about, when we started, we'd gone, well, we'll give it 5 years. The idea of long-term commitment, you just don't go away after 6 months. And then I sat her down in the cafe and went, Ursula, this is not 5 years, this is minimum 10. You can see where we are. This is a long-term process. And so we went, yeah, okay, let's give it a go. So we've been now 28 years building the work of the company up and choosing to be based in this wonderful place with its beauty and its scar tissue and its fantastic people. Derry is a gem in many, many ways. You know, like you feel the scar tissue and the love that you have is inseparable from this scar tissue of a place. It's been an amazing 28 years to develop something and commit to it. And when we moved, we had this clear idea that we wanted to create an ensemble. So we wanted colleagues, and we wanted colleagues who wanted to be somewhere rather than people who were flitting around places. I mean, there's nothing wrong with going from project to project. And I mean, people, especially when you're younger, it's something that always maybe seems appealing. But we wanted to work with people who were committed to being somewhere, committed to long-term relationships, and where you could grow. I was, 36 or 37, I think 36 when we moved to Derry. And okay, how does this dancing life continue as you get older? And of course, at 36, you think, oh, I'm getting older now. But then you can see that there's a lot more time. And what do people do? You're looking for kind of examples of people who carry on. And some of those people that I talked about from America, England, and Germany and different places, who was perceived as avant-garde in the 60s, and they were still going. And I saw people performing in their 50s and 60s. Somebody like Kazuo Ono, who's a Buto dancer, I saw him perform when he was in his 80s. And I was deeply moved by people who are older performing. And that connected very much with this early experiences of working with people who are not what I said, young, athletic, cookie cutter kind of contemporary dancer, which is marginally less extreme now than it used to be, but it's still very, very strong. I was more interested in these other people and what other people do when they dance, when they make poetic decisions in movement. What textures and not exactly stories, but what meanings, what poetic forms of meaning are available to people who are not in this quote normal dancer. It's interesting because those people who are not like this tend to think about themselves more as people than bodies. And this is much more interesting. People moving with poetic intent. It's a very different disposition towards what dancing is than how does this body move? It's more symbolic gesture or sculptural or something, whereas me and Ursula are definitely very much more interested in processes of transformation, a little bit more like a poetic version of theatre. So, like, what does an actor do is like the actor's movement is a prosaic process. It's like a short story or a novel where they're constrained by limits of character development and narrative development. Whereas as a dancer, you're using the same materials, or not really using. You're coming to the same materials, but from a poetic point of view. So you're not limited by these constraints of theatre, like the narrative or the character development. So you can change voice, you can use the equivalent of, but different grammatical structure. Like as an analogy with language, it's like a poet has all these demands and freedoms about assonance and dissonance and line length and rhyme and internal rhyme and the structure, the rhythm, the iambic pentameter or the structure of a sonnet, or all these sort of things which are poetic constraints or liberations. We developed the idea that dancing was more like that. It was like a movement thing, which was about what actors do in this process of being transformed. Theatre is very dull unless you see a transformation happen. That transformation has to be of the actor, him or herself. And it also has to be a transformation of the character that they're inhabiting. Otherwise, nothing is happening. There has to be something. There has to be conflict and development, change, resolution. So we thought about this in terms of the dance world, that this is actually what we were interested in terms of dancing. Maybe more like Buto in that kind of theoretical thing rather than what would be standard practice of contemporary dance. So it's very much about watching and understanding and exploring those ideas and developing methods and ways to develop and throw light on those ideas. And so from there, we developed a whole sets of practices. Our performance work varies from very, very pure movement to very, very theatrical, and has been very, very varied over the 28 years of working since being based in Derry. But it has that underneath it. So it's not really an idiom or a style. It's more like a disposition towards what we think the material of dancing is. We don't think it's bodies. Dancing is something people do. not bodies. That is extremely against both the history of dancing, looking in mirrors and doing shapes, and this classic standard training, like programming people, training the body. And people talk about their body this and my body that, and it's very common. People have this feeling about being outside yourself, moving your body. I'm like a machine, an object to be used. And then that is also very strong in the academic world of dance research and development, like kind of queer bodies in liminal space or something, or post-colonial bodies and bodies. So I just think there's a real contradiction and a mistake to think that what you're dealing with is bodies. We're kind of looking at it from a different angle. So it's not kind of against anything, because I think our view, but coming close to being maybe universal. Nothing's universal, but it's very inclusive of lots of things. There are many ways to make dancing. How we are disposed towards ourselves and to other people when we see people move with poetic intent is absolutely at the center of what we are concerned with in Echo Echo. So we say people, not bodies, armor off, not armor on, and that dancing is real movement in real time, real space, engaged in with poetic intent. So that is real movement. It's not the imagination. It's not your private experience like you have in the somatic practices. It's a composition in the real world, real time, real space, and engaged in with poetic intent means it must have some consciousness in it, and consciousness of the dynamics of syntax and grammar, and how the dance is rooted in the common human syntax and grammar of movement and grows from it, rather than being a imposition on it or a model of what you should be, a model of perfection, or so if you line that up a little bit alongside ideas about literature and music, our ideas would line up very well with a lot of ideas about what literature and what music are, but doesn't line up so well with the common ways of thinking about dancing. And interestingly, in the looking in mirrors training in dancing, and the do the right movement with your body and copy the teacher sort of karaoke kind of style, this has made a lot of people get very alienated from dancing. So people either don't join in, don't really want to do it, or they really dedicate themselves to it, but it's kind of alienating feeling. A lot of dancers have a very friction related relationship with themselves as dancers and dancing. It's really common if you're ever in a dance school or in the dance scene, you feel this, like, because it's quite alienating to think of yourself as an object and be told what to do with your body, and everybody's had that experience. And then the reaction to that has been for people to go for the somatic practices, body mind centering and rolling release and rolling around the floor, feel your liver, influenced very much by movement therapy. That model is incredibly rich. I've done a lot of that stuff, so I'm not dismissing it. But it's not really activated as a poetic resource. That's a generalization, because there are a lot of people who are doing that, but in different ways. It tends to encourage a therapeutic disposition in the people who engage in it, in those kind of practices, rather than a poetic one. So one of the concerns that Ursula and I had was to activate those resources as poetic resources. And so maybe some of that framing gives you an idea about why we call ourselves a dance theatre company rather than just a dance company, because we felt at the time that was maybe indicating that we weren't going along this kind of show your body doing movements and shapes that nobody else can do, and then either have a concept and objects that you do it around, or some music that you kind of align yourself with. So we were more concerned with the movement as the material of the composition.
What does the actual structure consist of in terms of, I know you've got like 4 ensemble members, but you also have, are they resident artists or are they
associate
associate artists? What does that look like as a company as it stands now? And was it always like that, or were they introduced over the years?
Yeah, well, what happened was we sort of patiently gathered people. So first of all, what happened was that Ursula and I made some work just together, and then 2 of our students, they wanted to be with us, so they just came and they started dancing with us. Actually, it was 3, really. There were 2 and then there was 3. And they had been people who'd come to workshops when we were on tour in 1996. And they stuck with us. And then one is now went off to Spain. She's a Derry woman. She went off to Spain. She's a flamenco dancer teacher. The other 2 went, one after doing a couple of professional projects with us, went off then afterwards, a little bit like me, to train in England. She went to a university to do a degree in England. And the other one, she had a knee injury and then went off to do some kind of remedial stuff with her knee, and then decided she wanted to be a massage therapist. So she's got great massage therapy practice. She's actually on our board now, Kira. So we kept this connection going. And then Aisha, who's one of the ensemble, she's the senior member of the ensemble. She's been around the longest. Ursula and I were both teaching when there was a dance degree in the University of Ulster in Derry until they pulled the money, along with a lot of other art stuff. But a few students from this became apprentices with me and Ursula. One of our youth dance company people, she went away to train and came back. So people wanted to come back. They went away to train and come back. This was very common. Kelly was at the university when Ursula and I were teaching. She was in one of the early years of that. She's in the ensemble now. Zoe was in the youth dance. She went away and came back. Aisha was working with us and then went away and came back. Tonya connected with me through a lot of work that I was doing in Russia and then came to do a project with us and then stayed. So this kind of organic process of collecting people, and there have been quite a few other people that have gone through the company in various ways, but all in this organic way of basically joining through projects, through being present in Derry, because we're not looking for people who will come and do a project and then go away again, unless we've got the core people here. Then getting people to come and go is fine, but we have this home base and this core of people. So that's always been the model. We wanted, Ursula and I, to create a model where we would pay an ensemble as employed by the company. But this is completely impossible. I think the only one in Ireland now is Laeubli, who pay people for a year.
And that's very recent as well.
That's extremely recent. And also it's top down. That project was designed to do that by somebody at the top. Okay, for better or worse, we don't know. It remains to be seen how that project develops. The idea that you could build a project which was a stable employment for people from the bottom, that's just completely out of the question. So what we did was we developed a model where we managed to get enough money to employ an artistic director. So first of all, Ursula and I found some money with the support of people in Derry, actually. A lot of support. We had a lot of support to stay and to finally get some money to get some admin support, because we were just living off small projects. So we got a company manager. We got money, and it was like, how are we going to use this money? We need to pay somebody else. So first of all, we paid somebody else, not ourselves. And then we got enough money from the Arts Council of Northern Ireland to create a artistic director post. Ursula was supposed to apply for that post. She then got sick with breast cancer. She said, I can't do this while I'm going through treatment. So I said, well, I'll do it then. It wasn't my first choice. And then she just didn't get better. None of the treatment worked. And in 2 years, she just died. So I was left with the job and without Ursula, which was a massive hole. And we had always worked as a very, very balanced team. We brought different abilities to the whole task of organising, and we taught together. We did so much literally in the same way. Performing, improvising, teaching, all kinds of projects, and organising, discussing. We were both pretty tough. She was a very kind, soft person, but no nonsense. She wouldn't have taken any nonsense, including from me. And I was always the more maybe analytical. She was really developing her practice as a Soto Zen meditation, going towards more spiritual, you say, although that's maybe not quite the right word for it, but practices that were influenced from another place, which I had always taken interest in as well, but was not at the core of. And then I had this kind of more academic or analytical side to it, developing theories about what we were doing and reflected. When she died, it was a big hole, which in a strange way, it's a weird thing to say, but actually in my life has also been a blessing, because I had to learn things that I would never have had to learn if we had carried on working as a pair. So I had to really think about what was Ursula bringing to the company, what was she developing, and how could I allow that to happen and learn about that. I think I have learned something from the time since she died in 2011. The support of the people, because the time she died was just when we'd got the ensemble started, so we'd gone through a little bit of an apprentice process. And so we'd finally arrived. We had actually organised it very consciously that we had a 3-year project which was loosely connected to the London Olympics. We had three projects that we did with this so that people could really come to find out what the work we had developed and what the perspective we had on it was, and really embed themselves in it. And the training that people were having in their university kind of context of training to be a modern dancer or whatever, it's great, but it's far away from being able to just step into the work that Ursula and I were doing. So what we did was create this kind of apprenticeship model, and we had, thankfully, the money to do that. And the third project of those 3 projects was a full-on production with a beautiful installation, really more than a set, by an artist called Dan Shipsides from Belfast, a fantastic artist, like great guy. And because we can't pay the ensemble on an ongoing contract, what we did was develop a model where they are basically at the center of the company. They get privileged access to studios, they get administrative support, they get in-kind support. So if they're applying for funding for projects, we can give them studio space, administrative support, PR support, mentoring, and all that kind of stuff. That really, really helps their
It's a real like
application.
community
Yeah,
aspect of
yeah,
we can't maybe give you the money, but we will give
exactly.
you
Yeah.
any other type
Yeah.
of resource that we have access
And
to, which is really nice.
they care about the company and about each other and about the building, and they look after the whole project and they get benefits from it, which is not really, people should have employment, but who in the arts has employment, except I'm
Exactly.
really unusual that I'm employed currently until not in whatever it is, 6 weeks time or something. But I've had a period of time which I didn't actually want. But a period of time when I've been employed, and a small amount of my job, 20%, whatever, is 25% is officially my own work or something. Not that it's ever that much. That I do have a reliable salary. Well, each year it's kind of fingers crossed, and this year it was not. But I don't know anybody who's an artist. I know lots of people who are administrators and organisers and who deliver projects who get paid. Even a lot of those are on 1-year renewable things. So it's very, very precarious. So in that circumstance, probably I would say the ensemble have a better circumstance than most in terms of the long-term sustainability. And also those people are people who all have caring responsibilities for family, for children, for elderly parents. They're not young people in their 30s. So this is kind of people who would just probably not be making work, not be professionally engaged with the thing that they're have dedicated their life to, if it wasn't for a context that supported them. This is really, really important, because the voices, the physical voices, the movement voices, the poems in movement that are written in the world now are largely young, rootless people who go around the place from project to project, being told what to do by somebody who's paid better than them, does the project, and then sometimes gets a little bit of chance to kind of express themselves because there's a kind of collaborative process. But in this context of like having a project for a few weeks or a few months, and then they're off again. Those people are the people whose presence in movement we see in the professional dance world. And we don't see the presence in movement, the poetic movement presence of somebody who is a 45-year-old and has 3 kids, lives in a house not far away from where her family lives, or somebody who is caring for their elderly mother and can't go off somewhere. So this was the model, and we've developed this model now further, where we've got a long-term body wisdom project, which is only for people over 50, which is an amazing project. They're incredible people and incredible movers. But of course, they don't look like people who would be in Wayne McGregor's work or something. Thank goodness, because that's not what we are doing. We are not selecting people out of the big dance schools, people who are desperate for a job, doing their audition and being the best at something within a very, very narrow framework. and then pretending that this is the peak or the absolute perfection of what dance can be. It's like thinking that playing a lot of notes very quickly and very loud is somehow a measure of whether it's good music or not. That's not how you measure whether it's good or not. And that's not how you train people to be a good musician. So we're kind of in this other perspective on what we're doing. That extends then to the whole range of stuff we do. We do a lot of stuff with people with, quote, disabilities, kids and adults, all sorts of people, like really, really wide range of human experience in movement as a resource for poetic outcomes, poetic proposals, poetic invitations. And that's what we work in. And we work in that in the context of classes and workshops. We work in care settings, and we make work and we tour work. We make performance work for kids and for adults. We make pieces that are pure movement, and we make pieces that are very narrative, but they're all rooted in this process of transformation in movement, which has a poetic foundation, not a therapeutic one and not an objective one. Human beings being transformed, being moved and moving people. So that's the background of what we try to do. It's quite well thought out. Our practice, what we call, poetic movement. The idea is that we are all intuitively poetic in movement, and that is constrained a lot. Our lives is often quite constrained for good reasons and bad reasons. Like, you don't want, it's not the place to go walking down the street and kind of, I don't know, randomly expressing yourself in movement. It's like, there are kind of etiquettes and manners involved. You don't go and do your martial arts suddenly in the street. You do it in the dojo, and then you leave it in the dojo, and you bow at the end, say, we behave this way in the dojo, and then we leave, and we don't behave that way outside. So we bow and we leave it behind. But what we learn in the dojo affects our lives. And so with dancing, it's a little bit like that. There's a special places where you can make it so that this is rich and possible and open. And then you can go, no, now we leave it behind. We don't do that. So the idea that we're all human beings, and I never met a human being that wasn't naturally poetic. I've danced with people who they can move their head a little bit. I mean, that's it. People with a severe spinal injury or very, very bad wasting diseases. And I've worked with many people who don't use language, don't use verbal language. Many people with all kinds of neurodiversities and physical limitations and accidents, really lots, as have my colleagues. I've never met somebody that wasn't poetic in movement. Often it isn't allowed to grow out into something that has a length of time in it, or development, or layers, or becomes an invitation for somebody to watch at length, or more of a gift than an accident. You're offering it to the world. And so that's where our work begins, with this intuition. What makes sense in movement? Alongside this, which is very highly developed practices for getting people to release themselves into movement, and to understand themselves as composers when they do movement rather than therapists of themselves. They're composing movement. And then alongside this is a highly, highly developed analytic system about what are the parameters of poetic movement and how do we explore them. So vertical space, phrasing, proximity, spatial dispositions, adaptive phase of movement and directive phase of movement, and many, many other things. That's nearly like a curriculum that you could do, which I do. I teach this stuff. The techniques, if you like, of poetry. But the techniques are not ways of learning to do it. Techniques are ways of paying attention to something you're already doing. Like, you can't learn to be a musician by just playing the scale again and again. You have to play the scale as if it's music already, and then it will teach you something.
Echo Dance has lost all its funding from Arts Council of Northern Ireland, and you guys are based in Northern Ireland as well. They're your primary funders.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any idea that you wouldn't get your funding, because you've gotten it for 20 years now?
Yeah.
Was there any indication that you wouldn't get it this year?
I think it's over 20 years. But no, we have had no indication whatsoever that the Arts Council were unhappy. The primary reason they cut us is artistic quality is not good enough. Some other stuff about not being viable. We've had no indication of this before. None. What can you say? That we are not in a position to publish the feedback that they gave us that explains in detail what they think about us. We've shared it with our elected representatives because we think it's very important that people know. But we are advised that currently publishing it might be considered trying to influence an appeal, which we're in. The idea that the quality of what we do as a programme is for anybody who wants to get a view of what we actually do and the quality of it could just look at our website. Over 130 letters, all different. It's not a formula letter that we have received from people who've worked with us as students, as children, parents of children, colleagues in the art, collaborators, artists of various kinds, ensemble artists, associate artists, because we also have a ring of associate artists that we support as well through the use of the space. They have a similar relationship to the company as the ensemble do, but they're not just dance background, but the others, theatre and puppetry and fine art. We run a gallery in our space as well. We've had 10 international festivals. Just look at what we do. The idea that what we're doing is somehow not high enough quality is just absurd. I mean, it's so absurd. It's if it wasn't so distressing for people. I mean, obviously, concerned about me because I'm going to be redundant at the age of 64, having spent 28 years doing this. But that's not really the biggest thing. The biggest thing is all of the people who come together and benefit from this centre and from this company. And that includes parents of the kids who come on a Saturday morning. It includes all of the people who come for artist residencies. It includes all of the associate artists, the ensemble artists. It includes all of the international artists that come and get support, who come and bring their work. People in Derry would not see any of the work that they've seen if it wasn't for us having done this. We have a very sophisticated, educated audience of ordinary people in Derry who have seen more varied and more high quality dance work and dance-related work at Echo Echo than probably anybody outside of a major city would get. And they have an independent view on it. It is, of course, not everything. We're not a shop. We're not a supermarket. We do what we do, and we do it well. And it's very, very welcoming and open. And if you read the letters that are there, you can see that it gives a complete. It doesn't align at all with what the Arts Council have said about us, the quality of the work, the poetic movement practices. They dismiss it completely, and they obviously don't really understand what it is. It looks like the reasons for cutting us are kind of invented post factum, so we don't really know. So we're appealing because it's so absurd. But you can't appeal on artistic grounds, so you can only appeal on process grounds. So we've tried to illustrate that their processes must be inadequate and faulty, because how could they possibly come to this judgment about us? The contradiction is, of course, that they've funded us without any explicit challenge to the quality of what we do for over 20 years, 33 successful applications to the Arts Council, including that they gave us on the last day of the financial year an increase because they'd got money that they had to spend. I think gave over 10,000 to us on the last day of the year on the basis that they thought we could budget that into our budget of the year that had just gone. I think that was a couple of years ago, 2 years or 3 years ago. Why they would be giving money to something that was this bad for 20 years is just crazy. How can we know what is going on there? But it doesn't look reasonable to us. It definitely doesn't look reasonable to any of our elected representatives, with full support, as far as I understand it. I mean, people have told me this, cross-party, like all of the parties, no sectarian division. We're perceived as being an example of an inclusive company that is not scratching at the scar tissue of the Troubles. It's very, very strange. The City Council have passed a motion asking the Minister and the Arts Council to come to be questioned at the council in Derry on why they've cut us. This council have written to the Taoiseach saying, would the Irish government consider taking Derry under its wing in terms of arts funding, because this is in the context of massive disparity in funding across Northern Ireland, not just in Derry, Belfast compared to the rest. And that's been going on. And there's been a lot of lobbying, which I was involved in, about that over the last 4 or 5 years to try to get this recognised as an issue. And
because there are huge differences.
Massive. Yeah, there are two different issues. One is the issue of just the amount of money that there is. Per head, the amount in the north is worse than anywhere in UK or Ireland, which is making it difficult to do cross-border collaborations, even to invite companies because of the cost of living, what you need to pay people. It's not that different to get a company of 6 people from Bulgaria or a solo or duet from Dublin, including travel and everything, because the costs that people have are just so. And if this disparity becomes more and more, you just get the possibility to integrate cross-border becomes very difficult. But it's not just the cross-border thing, it's also between the centres. Dublin, I don't know whether it's as bad. I think it's not as bad in the Republic. So it's the amount of money, but how it's distributed. But people always say, well, we don't have enough money. We can't solve that problem of disparity in funding because we don't have enough money. And then you go, well, those are two different issues. If you don't have enough money, you have to make decisions. And you can't make decisions on the basis of inequitable processes or considerations. That's not really it. So you can't avoid the difficult questions by just going, we don't have enough money. Your responsibility is to address those difficult questions. And if people would address those difficult questions, then it might be leverage to get more money into the system, because the consequences of those answering those difficult questions fairly, which would be more distribution of money outside the big metropolitan centres, you would have consequences for those projects in the metropolitan centres that politicians notice. If you're in the back end of nowhere, which is basically how Derry is considered, you're not going to be noticed. We can just disappear. Nobody important is going to notice us or care about it, because the important people don't live in Derry. That's the perception, you see. So it's much easier. So there's a kind of inevitable, what happens is that those who have will be given to unto, and those who don't will just fall off the edge of the cliff. And then it becomes possible to push them off the edge of the cliff as a way of preserving, money for things that are too big to fail. So that dynamic is very strong, I think. And it's understandable. It's not like, of course, it's how things work, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't, point it out and try to do something about it.
Because Echo Echo is so involved in the community, they do so much. If the funding doesn't come through, what does the future of Echo Echo look like? And what effect does that have on the community?
Currently, the cliff edge looks like the end of July. And that cliff edge is 3 redundancies for the people who work for the company. We earn the median salary for Northern Ireland. So one person is significantly below that, actually. We try to have as flat a structure as we can. But nobody's getting rich at any point out of this of the people who run the company. Highly, highly skilled are the 3 of us. Enormous amount of experience that we've built up, understanding how to do things. We have an immaculate reputation in the past for our company management. The city council absolutely love us because we're so reliable, transparent, really, really good communicators. And we support other artists in the city constantly. So all that capacity and team that we've built up, Barry, the company technical manager, is highly skilled across design and lighting and sound and computer design stuff. And Laeubli has a quarter of a century of understanding how these things work and understanding Echo Echo. So you lose that team, and probably you lose that team from the arts. It's hard to know. I don't know what I will do. I know that Laeubli will probably not get a job in the arts. There isn't one, and he stayed here because he has family responsibilities, so he's not going somewhere else. He's a fantastic. He is the best. He is incredible company manager. And Barry will be outside of the kind of rich arts, sportive arts practice, and he's also working in his own creative stuff, leading on projects as well. So that'll disappear and probably go to be a sound engineer or something. I don't know what his plans are. I don't know what they would be, but it definitely not in this creative, artistically driven kind of way. And I don't know, maybe I'll get a job. I don't know, I have kids and I look after them. I doubt if a freelance life based in Derry is realistic. I'm not going anywhere because I love Derry and my kids live here. So I guess I'll get a job as something else, maybe working in a care home. I'm not proud other people get made redundant. Don't know whether, if it's possible, I might give it a try to freelance, but space and time and reliable income and all that sort of stuff, it's very, very difficult. And at the age of 64, my options are probably pretty limited. So that's about the people who have jobs, but this is the least important thing. So get that out of the way and then go, what do the ensemble lose? They lose space, they lose support for their own practice, they lose a place to invite people to, and they lose the possibility for subsidized use of space so that they can invite participants to do projects, classes, and so on. So that will make their life as independent artists significantly more difficult, possibly unsustainable. The four associate artists, they have their own practices more outside the company as well, but their creative practice rather than their practice as teachers and facilitators, that will be seriously affected because those people are using the support they get from Echo Echo to create and make work, including work that has toured abroad in the last 12 months. That will basically be made very, very difficult for them. How will Karen Torley, who's the puppeteer who's working with one of the ensemble, Zoe Ramsey, where's she going to get space for several weeks at the right times in order to collaborate, in order to create a magical work? Where is that going to happen in Derry? No, it's not. I mean, I can't see where she gets this because the other organisations in Derry don't focus themselves on that support for the individual artists and for the creative process. They're focusing themselves on delivery of a programme, which is a different focus. So we are unique in this way, and you'll see if you read the letters. And then even more important than that is that the people who come to see things won't get to see things at the festivals. We do multiple productions, and none of them, bar one, in the last 13 years has had direct support from the Arts Council of Northern Ireland. They give us money for the building and for some salaries, which doesn't cover all of that. But the productions we've made, including the ones that have toured abroad, like I've had work in Moldova, Romania in the last 12 months. I'm working in Italy. I've been working in the major Tanshus, which is like the equivalent of Sadler's Wells in Sweden, in Stockholm as the dramaturge. All of that stuff just becomes moot because there's no space there's no home, there's no route, there's no resources of supporting kind. We won't have any possibility for inviting people to support them with space for artist residencies, including a lot of people from across the border have come from that, and foreign people. We've had a lot of people from over the years from the Republic, Germany and Lithuania. We'll lose 2 festivals because we won't have a place to put them on, because there really isn't a theatre in which you can put the kind of scale of stuff that we put on. We don't have a huge auditorium, but we have a nice big performance space. So you can get work in which has 5, 6, 7 people, 8 people in it, movement work, because it's 12 metres wide by 8 metres deep. And there's not another performance space like that in Derry. So the chance people have to come and see work, which has been on in our festivals, will be massively diminished. So that will be a great loss to audiences. And then the participatory programme. There are 2 elements of that really important. One is the support, the space being there so that we can put things on at a cost which people can afford. If the dancers have to hire places, that will possibly double the cost of us. And the other, so there was the end of term performance of the Saturday kids classes. There are a lot of parents there who say, oh, this is the only thing my kid came to really, really love. Oh, he has difficulty with finding interaction with people. A lot of people say, oh, neurodivergent kids and stuff. But we are not focused on this. We just make it very welcoming. And the methods that we have for leading people into movement in a poetic way are really, really well developed. They work for people. People find their way in who otherwise not find their way. And we had parents that after the end of term performance were literally weeping that they wouldn't be able to bring their kids again. And people writing, but I was planning to bring my 4-year-old and now I won't be able to, like writing. Very important about this, and the body wisdom and the evening classes for adults and the weekend workshops that we do with professional visitors and with the ensemble and with me, the professional development work we do. All of this works because we have created an environment which is coherent with the movement practice that we do. It's very, very noticeable. People love coming into the building, into Echo Echo Studios, because it is really, really welcoming in how it's designed. It's not a generic public building. but it's also not a private house. It's got this warmth in it, how we have designed it from the beginning. When we had it renovated in 2013, we made it so that it's warm and welcoming. We'd learned a lot about how to do that. It works really, really beautifully. And that helps people in the art practice because it's an appropriate environment. It's not generic. It's not dance studios with mirrors and black curtains. We've designed this place so that it is really nice and beautiful and lovely to come into. And that will go completely. That will just be lost because we'll have to be in this place and that place and this place, any work that we do, which will not have that kind of curation and nurturing of the physical environment. We'll lose the gallery space so that the local and regional mostly, although some international artists will not have that place to exhibit their work. That will be all gone the end of July. After 28 years of building something up, you can read the letters of support and you'll see that people, professional colleagues, are writing more places like this should be encouraged and open, not less. It shouldn't be closing it. This is a really, really good model of how to do things. And it's really thought through, it's really conscious, far from perfect. A lot of the holes we have are because we don't have enough resources to do it really, really properly. But the goodwill and the open-heartedness and the beauty that is in what we do and what we've done. I can say it, but I would recommend anybody reading this to go to our website and read through those ones. Spend half an hour reading those 130 letters, whatever it is. You will see, and you'll go, how can this be disappeared like this on the say-so of a couple of people in the Arts Council of Northern Ireland? It's a great pity, and I would say it's a great pity even if it wasn't my job that's going, because it's a pity. It's really, really, really unfortunate. So that's what we'll lose.
You have festivals, you have youth classes, you have space for artists to come rehearse, to perform.
Yeah.
Is there anything else like that in the north?
Not as far as I mean, there are generic arts centres like the Playhouse or the Crescent. There are some municipal theatres, like one in Derry and one in Strabane, but nothing that is focused on art practice and not as specifically on artists, supporting artists to make work, and not in this integrated model where the whole programme has an ethos to it. It's more eclectic maybe in other places, or whatever you can make a bit of money from, or what's popular. But so it's not artist led. I mean, the thing about our project is it's led by the artists who are involved in it. Me, but not just me, the ensemble especially, who are right at the core of everything. And then the artists around who we collaborate with, like the associate artists and the artists who come for residencies. I mean, when artists come for residencies, I always ask them to tell me what they're going to do, like to write down a bit about what they're going to do in their residency. And I will say, great, that's what you should do, because you're the artist, you decide. And only on one occasion, out of many, many instances, has the artist done what they said they were going to do. And that's how it should be. They have an idea and they come and they start working, and then they realize when they're in the studio and they start working, they start exploring, actually they're taken in a slightly different direction, and that direction ends up arriving somewhere which we could not have imagined at the beginning. So what they said they were going to do is not what they did, but they began with something, with a discipline, not with just, and then they enter the studio. And I'm always like, this is fantastic. And the one thing where somebody did do literally what they said they were going to do was because they had to rehearse a piece that was already made and put a new person into a role that somebody had stepped out of, couldn't do. So that was pretty obvious what they were going to do. Although I have to say, actually on reflection, I think they really did change that piece actually. But that was probably largely because of the changing personnel. So there isn't anything like this.
It will be a massive loss if Echo Echo cannot operate anymore. Yeah. And it's a real shame. It does throw a lot of questions as to why this has happened, how it's happened, but also to lose something like this and to not have an indicator or a plan as to what you're going to replace it with does throw a lot of questions around whether or not they want to replace it or not.
There are two things to say about this stuff. One is that the husbanding of public resources is questionable as well, because the Arts Council approved our business plan and our plans for moving into the new building in 2013. when Derry was City of Culture for a year. So we got probably about more than £500,000 of public money to renovate a building which we don't own. So the building closing is just a complete loss of that investment. So if we move out, that investment disappears. But that's irresponsible, especially in the case where our plan was funded by the Arts Council to get the business plan into place. And they approved it because they were the ones who had to approve spending of capital money for City of Culture. It wasn't Arts Council money, as I understand it, but they approved that process. So it went through them. Our business plan, our strategy, said that we would be viable with standstill funding from what we had before City of Culture. We've been cut in real terms massively. So they haven't followed up on that investment. And I think that's pretty irresponsible use of public money to not have a strategic view of what they're doing with the money and supporting it. And the other thing is that in the recent round where we were cut, our financial year is April to March. So our announcement's already a month into the year that we're already in. We had announcement of our cut 1 month already into the year that they were cutting, right? It's only been announced a couple of days ago who they have given money to. And actually the Arts Council have had an increased budget. I think about £500,000, maybe a bit more. Clearly the reason they're cutting us is not to do with having less money. They've got more money. They could have directed that money at us, and they could have solved all of the, quote, issues which they pointed out, which are not issues in the way they say they are, but they could have helped us to do the things we do even better by increasing our funding to the place where it would be the equivalent of what they agreed when they approved the capital investment in Echo Studios in 2013, which would have mean increasing our AFP funding significantly. They could have done that. But what they've actually done is given all of that extra money, or depending on how you interpret it, close to all of it, to the big Belfast organisations, and then given a little bit of increase to regional organisations outside Belfast, not all. So one way of seeing that is that the two companies, one Belfast company and us, who had their funding completely cut, that what they've done is redistribute that money to the non-Belfast organisations to give them a wee bit of an uplift. But actually the new money that they've got has gone pretty much entirely into people will argue about how to interpret it, but basically you can see those organisations have got significant uplifts of hundreds of thousands of pounds, those 4 or 5 organisations in Belfast. So they could have chosen to make Echo grow, more vibrant, have less stresses, make it more possible for us to do more of what we're already doing so beautifully. But they chose not to. And they chose not to, I think, for reasons that maybe at some point will become clear, but certainly not the reasons that they've put in their feedback to us. But I suppose at some point let people know what that feedback was. But at the moment, we're just waiting for the review to come back. I mean, if the review is a fair process, we've of course consulted with people, shown them what our review submission is, and plenty of people say, well, how can they possibly turn that review down? Because it makes no sense at all. It's nonsense. We hold out very, very little hope that we will survive. We might be able to extend beyond July in order to give ourselves a chance to make a further appeal if the review is not successful. But that appeal probably, we're talking about taking a long time. The end of September might be possible, but of course we have financial obligations and so on, so we have to make sure that we can properly extend that. We're trying to do the sums. But we've got a fundraiser at the moment, which is, if we have to, that we close with proper care for all the people that are involved in, so to close with dignity and without leaving anybody in a really, really difficult position. That fundraiser is on our website and people can contribute to that if you want to. We've got really generous people. And you can also write letters of support if you want to. So if you want to find out more about Echo and more about the situation that we're in now, although we can't publish all of the information, but you can look at the Echo website, which is www.echoecodance.com. There you'll see a menu, and on the menu top menu item at the moment is Save Echo Echo, and that will give you access to a letter writing campaign to read letters that we've uploaded with the permission of all the people who wrote them. They're really worth reading if you want to understand what Echo Echo does, what it is and how it does it, and what will be lost because of the funding cut from the Arts Council. There's also the opportunity to write letters, which gives you an idea about some of the broader issues that the Arts Council raised in their criticisms of the company, in our view, almost entirely unfounded. But there's also the possibility to donate to our crowdfunder. Then there's also a lot of other stuff on the Echo Echo website, which you see about previous projects and current program that we're doing. Of course, we're not just abandoning everybody and everything. We just had a fantastic weekend of poetic movement practice with all 4 ensemble members of the company teaching together, and a group of about 20 plus people. That was fantastic. So yeah, go there if you want to have more information, and you can find a contact there as well if you're interested to talk to me or somebody else from the company. Then don't hesitate to get in touch.
Thank you so much, Steve, for coming on and chatting to us, and we hope to keep updated on what is happening with Echo Echo. Hopefully it all goes in your favour, because it would be a huge loss for all the artists involved and for the kids who are doing the youth theatre and the audience members bringing so much amazing work to Derry, which otherwise would maybe not come.
So thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you for having me.